Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. This is Sharon Dietrich, and I also have with us today our Senior Research Analyst, Chen Wang from Fran Data. Welcome, Chen.
Good afternoon,
And Chen was directly involved in wading through the Forbes data, which as we progress you will see was no small task, and you should be very grateful that I didn't have to do that. Let me tell you a little bit about Chen. She's spoken annually on franchising to Georgetown University. She's worked with private equity groups to target and recommend franchise brands for acquisition based on their financial goals. Performing third-party due diligence based on franchise brand health, performance, and growth potential. She has helped lenders create credit boxes in underwriting franchises, and that's just part of her varied experience. She also consults suppliers, including marketing and technology companies. And some of you on the call know her very well. She also works in targeting the franchise market for suppliers, developing products for the market, and formulating a strategic approach and messaging. And all of this is just a walk in the park for Chen. She's amazing. So today Chen will be detailing the Forbes process for us, providing insight into some interesting facts, and then providing some tips, which is I'm sure many of you are on this webinar for that. She's going to be providing some tips to help you perhaps move up on the list or at least stay where you are on the list. I know, or I hope, that this has sparked some thought-provoking internal debates for many of you, as perhaps you were not in the spot you thought your company would be in. But just the fact that you're on this webinar makes a huge statement. It says that you want to understand how we compiled the data and how you can possibly move up in the Forbes ranking. So before I begin asking Chen some questions, I wanted to address a topic that underlies the reasons why the Forbes list is so important. Having worked on the supplier side of franchising for over 20 years, well, I've seen the growing number of companies compiling their list of the top franchises in the industry. And I think that one can become immune to what I call the list syndrome. And the audience can become tired of reading claims by supplier companies to know which brand is the best. Many of these companies begin the process of compiling the list by kind of looking at their own clients, examining their own web traffic, sampling their client base exclusively. And the Forbes list is unique. It's unlike others in that we are tasked by Forbes to be an objective third party analyzing all companies for which we have an FDD available. So Forbes is our client. So this has made a huge difference in how we approach that list and the validity of that list. So let me go over briefly what we are going to be talking about today. We will give some background introduction to the Forbes ranking. We'll give our approach. We will then give some helpful hints of what you can do, maybe tell you why you're not on it, and how did the best get on the list. And then at the end we're going to have some questions and answers. So if you do have questions, please note that we would like you to put those in, there's a box for that. And at the end of the presentation we will be answering those questions. I also wanted to ask that if you have a question that is more general in nature that could appeal to the rest of the people on this webinar, then ask that. And if it's a specific question, we would love to answer that question individually. So at the end of the presentation, there will be a slide that indicates an email address or phone number that you can call. So again, we love your questions, and we will answer them at the end. All right, so Chen, finally. Let's begin with the explanation on the background of the Forbes list, please.
Sure. So this is the 4th year Forbes has hired us to compile the list. So we have tested and tried the methodology over the years. So the purpose of this ranking was for Forbes to give people who are looking into buying a franchise an overview of how different franchises' health and appeal measured up. So it provides a good jumping-off point to observe the wide breadth of opportunities available within franchising. And overall, our approach hasn't changed over the years, but we have tweaked some of the metrics and rates based on changes in the marketplace. So we focus on franchisees' perspective. So all the metrics we looked at assess the performance and the quality of a brand from the perspective of a prospective franchisee. So we separate brands into 3 categories based on investment levels, so that each ranking in each category is making more of an apples-to-apples comparison. So oftentimes we assume brands with a similar investment level are more or less targeting the same group of franchisees. Also, like Sharon said, this ranking is not based on any kind of submission or client listing. This is completely objective list. So the method has evolved a little bit, but overall we started with 3,300 franchise brands. And for this year's list, we've examined their performance over the most recent 5-year period between 2013 and 2017.
Wow, I want to make sure that everybody heard that you waded through 3,300 brands. I mean, that's just crazy. I just can't even imagine it. So can you help us explain how you made that first pass?
Sure. So first of all, we actually established 2 minimum criteria for brands to be even considered for this ranking. So basically, brands have to have at least 5 years of franchising experience and at least 20 franchise units operating in the beginning of the examining period, which is 2013, as well as at the end of the examining period, which is 2017. So that cuts down the list quite a bit. So for these 2 criteria, the rationale is that a brand needs to be actively offering franchises in the market and has enough scale with a consistent offering and enough performance history to be considered relevant for Forbes readers. And we believe these brands have a large enough base of franchisees to demonstrate that the business is adaptable to different geographic markets and that their performance can be replicated. And also, as you may know, younger systems may grow quickly and appear sustainable and healthy, but those appearances can be deceptive if the franchise businesses have not yet experienced a full business life cycle. So a full business life cycle means the progression of a business and its different phases over time, which includes the launch of the business growth, shakeout, maturity, and decline. And similarly, small systems tend to be disproportionately impacted by marginal movements in their unit patterns. For example, for a system with only 2 units, adding another 2 units would result in a growth rate of 100%. However, such growth would be considered very marginal for larger systems. And after applying these 2 minimum criteria, so for the first pass, we specifically looked at unit patterns, which include continuity rates and unit growth rates. So
I see on here also that there's health and appeal. That's kind of interesting. So can you let us know what that means?
Yes. So overall, by health and appeal, we mean unit patterns. So one of the most important measures for a franchise system health is to measure their ability to successfully keep units open and in operation. And the continuity rate is one of FranData's measures for system health and sustainability. Then on the other side, for the appeal, we looked at the unit growth as a measure of demand, so demand from both the franchisees and consumers' perspectives. So overall, in our methodology, the health is the continuity rate, and the appeal is the system growth. However, we don't weigh those the same. We assign more weight to the health than we do to the appeal. And also by doing that, we are emphasizing the importance of a healthy system to the long-term success of business owners.
Yeah, and Chen, that really makes sense because the health is far more important than the appeal. As we know, a lot of times franchisees are attracted to a particular industry due to their passions. So putting more emphasis on the health of the system really is a smart thing to do. So that seems good. All right, so now, as many of you know, Fran Data is at the heart of the industry. Being the research arm of the IFA, we have contributed to so many decisions that have advocated franchising. I did want to say that many of you are the recipients of that, and a lot of the analysts have worked hard providing that kind of information and data for the franchising community. We also have dealt with top brands, lenders. We know the marketplace. We understand the dynamics of the changing landscape. And so Chen, I heard you mention, it was very brief, but we're going to come back to it here. You mentioned we tweaked the metrics this year based on some of the changes in the marketplace. And what was the biggest change for this year, and how has it made a difference in the rankings?
Yeah, sure. So one of the biggest changes for this year is that we added more weight to franchisor support. So by franchisor support, we mean support towards franchisees regarding site selection, pre- and post-opening, marketing, etc. The metrics of which basically follow a similar structure disclosed in item 11, which a lot of you who are on this webinar are familiar with. So from a franchisee's perspective, one of the biggest benefits of joining a franchise system is the level of operational and financial knowledge and support a franchisee can get from the franchisor versus opening their own independent businesses. So this is especially beneficial and also important for new franchisees. Also, throughout our projects, we found that the amount of initial and ongoing support provided by the franchisor directly correlates to the success of franchise units in the system, and therefore also contribute to their system growth and system sustainability. So this is basically why we assigned more weight to support this year and also made a change this year.
Yeah, and we both know from talking to lenders, support is one of the key factors that they look at in underwriting. So all you lenders on this call know that for sure. And often the success, as you said, of the franchisee is due to the support, wisdom, and guidance experience of the franchisors. And what we have here, and some of the brands and lenders know this, we have a fund score. The fund score is a credit score. It contains, and one of the criteria of that fund score is the support of the franchisor or franchisee, and because we know that lenders are interested in that, and it's an important part of their decision-making process. So if you're on the call and you're a lender and you're unaware of what a fund score is, or you're a brand, you're a mature brand, just contact us, and we'll give you some information and send you an example of a fund score. But the short explanation is basically a credit score on mature brands. So Chen, we use 5 criteria to represent what prospective franchise owners should initially be using to make an informed decision for which franchise to buy. And so at this point, I want to remind everybody on the call that we got a different hat on as we look at this slide. The hat we have on is not a lender, it's not a supplier, it's not a franchisor. It is what a franchisee should be looking at and educating themselves about. So what were those 5 criteria?
Sure. So we just talked about three of them. First is system sustainability, which is the system health and the ability to keep units open and operational. And second is system demand. So that's the franchise, basically franchise system growth, and then franchisor support. And the other two criteria are value for investment and franchisor stability. So value for investment indicates how much a franchisee can potentially make through operating the business. Among brands with similar system and franchisor performance, prospective franchise investors actually seek the opportunity with the highest potential earnings and returns on their investment. So for brands to remain competitive among franchisee prospects, this metric assesses and highlights brands that allow transparency into this data, also have sound unit economic performance, and offer operators a possibility of achieving financial success. And the other thing is franchisor stability. So this metric specifically examined the franchisor's financial stability. So this is important to franchisees for two main reasons. The first is to see whether the franchisor is willing or is able to invest back into the system and supporting the system. And the second is to evaluate whether the franchisor is financially healthy enough to be around for the length of the franchisee's operations. Because usually the initial investment agreement terms average 10 years. And in addition to that, the financial stability is also what lenders are looking for. So for franchisors with healthy financials in business, their franchisees tend to have a better ability to get financing.
Well, I'm sure that this kind of information is extremely helpful to those searching for businesses, and that's one of the reasons the Forbes list is so important, as many, many prospective franchisees wait for that and look for it. So, all right, so then we applied 4 different criteria to kind of get to the top brand. So could you review that with us?
Sure. So once we got through those metrics, we refined the list for top-ranking brands based on 4 additional criteria. So the first is they had to disclose unit financial performance, because we do believe this is very important for prospective franchisees. And the second and third are they had to grow from a minimum of 50 franchise units at the beginning of 2013 and had to have grown to a level of 100 franchise units at the end of 2017. So this just shows the scale of their growth. And the last one is they couldn't have any declines in system size during the examining period, which means their year-over-year system growth had to be positive for any of the years we examined.
And having looked at a lot of FDDs, not as many as you have, Chen, but I've looked at a lot of them, and that's very impressive that they had no declines in that that period of time. So wow, that's really good. Okay, so we're going to look at something a little bit different in this slide, and that is that we all know the Forbes list had both the top 10 and what we here at FranData call the best, top 10, and the rest. But in this particular, the lower tier, we actually applied 2 exemptions to that tier. So what were those exemptions?
Sure. So as we did some fine-tuning for the top list, so we also exempted some brands from being ranked into the lower tier based on another 2 criteria. So the first is we exempted brands with disclosures, especially informative disclosures on unit financial performance. And the second is we took out brands that had fewer than 50 franchise units at the beginning of 2013. And the reason for the first exemption is that we believe if a franchise brand discloses unit level financial data, it is providing a level of transparency into its performance, which will enable prospective franchisees to make a more informed decision. So in other words, even if a brand has low unit sustainability or slow system growth, but provides insight into the financial performance of its units, prospective franchisees do have better information on them to be able to evaluate their potential business outcomes as well as returns. So in the end, we're actually giving credits to these brands that offer greater transparency into their data. And the purpose of the second exemption is to basically eliminate brands that lack sufficient skill to evaluate past performance.
Great, thank you. So now we're going to move on to the top brands. And so congratulations to them, as you will hear Chen in a minute about what it took to get there. And so Chen, just give us some general and specific insights or information and share with us a few stats that might be helpful.
Yeah, sure. So as we all know, the rankings are extremely competitive. And in order to make into the final top 10, brands not only have to have virtually flawless growth, proven system sustainability, but they have to perform better, provide more informative data and comprehensive support towards franchisees than most of the brands in their investment category. So having said that, overall the medium investment category was by far the most competitive. So for the top ranking brands, they have an average score of 184 out of 200 compared to 180 for the high investment level and 173 for the low investment level. And also this year, as you can see in the table, we even have a tie in this category. So Penn Station and Elements Massage are both number 10. And if we use 150 as the cutoff line for high scores, among all three investment levels, there were a total of 26 brands reached that score in the middle category, while only 18 and 15 brands in the high and low reached that score. So overall, the medium investment level just has a higher caliber score. And also the medium investment category provides overall the most comprehensive Item 19 disclosures and has the highest average score on value for investment, which is one of the 5 criteria we looked at in terms of average unit sales growth, sales to initial investment ratios, disclosure on profitability, etc. And in addition to that, the high investment category has the highest average score on unit patterns, which is measured by system sustainability and growth. So specifically, this category has the highest unit continuity rate compared to other categories. So they have an average continuity rate of 97.8%, which is considered to be very high, while the low investments average is 89.5%. So this is also consistent with what we have seen across the universe, and that low investment businesses are easier to get into and also easier to get out of. Of course, there's a lot of factors weighing into that as well, but overall the difference in the continuity rates is quite significant.
So the middle investment, very, very competitive, congrats. Mm-hmm. And then the continuity rate of the high investment, unbelievably at 97.8%. That is incredible. So the next slide, I think, is why a lot of at least franchisors are on this, and that is that we are looking to you, Chen, to give us some helpful hints so that we can do much better next year or keep our position. So what can you do? And I think we kind of covered a little bit why they aren't on it, maybe because of some of the preliminary requirements, but give us some helpful hints.
Yeah, sure. So obviously there are things that might not be necessarily or directly in the franchisor's control, as we all know, such as the time taken to open a unit and unit closures as a result of the operator's issues and such. So however, from the perspective of prospective franchisees, I think one big thing that franchisors can do is to improve their transparency on information disclosure, such as the unit level financial performance in item 19, as well as improve the quality of the data disclosed. So over the years, we have found that franchisors have increased their transparency into unit level financial performance. And the disclosure rate steadily increased since 2012. So overall, franchisors are making those strides in response to market demands because they know they need to show their potential financial opportunity to be able to attract the franchisees, especially quality franchisees. So from another perspective, besides franchisees, this information is also very important for lenders during their underwriting process. So nowadays, credit decisions have become more data-driven, relying more on algorithms rather than the traditional methods. So franchisors will need to develop more transparent data, not only the amount of information they put in, but also the quality of the information they put in, so that lenders can use the information to better gauge their risks. And also by doing that, franchisors are also helping their franchisees get funded more efficiently and therefore help with their system growth, further help with their system growth and sustainability. So.
And I've talked to quite a few franchisors who either don't have the data for that item 19 or for various reasons are either prohibited or do not want to share that information. And so as far as lenders are concerned, FranData does have a way in which we can overcome that lapse of the ability to be transparent on item 19, and that's with our bank credit report. Which actually is given to lenders. It's an in-depth report, and lenders would sign an NDA, and they would be able to see information that a potential franchisee cannot see. So we have tried to provide a way for franchisors to be able to give good quality information to lenders to help potential franchisees to get better terms and to create a more efficient means of underwriting a loan, plus with a bank credit report and two other products that we have that actually go in and work in individual parts of the fund score. With that, we're able to allow lenders to be able to do a much better job of underwriting. So if you're interested in that, you have an issue with item 19, let us know and we will be able to talk you through that and be able to help you. So I wanted to look for a second because we know that we are in the middle of the marketplace. We know what's going on, and we know that lenders rely on us for objectivity. Those of you lenders on the call, and we have a bunch of you, thank you for coming. But you use us to evaluate the brands with fund reports, as I mentioned, and bank credit reports and other metrics. And the franchise registry, which enables lenders to come on and to be able to gather information quickly and efficiently. We're finding that lenders like to work with us rather than going directly to the brand. It's far easier for them to do that, and they're evaluating the brand as much as the borrower these days. So it's essential that people give information, and we are objective, and everyone knows that. So that's one of the reasons that Forbes has come to us. And many on this call are aware of our research capabilities as we work with you, as evidenced obviously by our work on the Forbes list. And Chen is one of the senior analysts, and we have many analysts who work behind the scenes. We've helped many brands with expansion. We are able to do franchisee profiling, international advice, and suppliers have looked to us for research as well as lenders. So don't hesitate to call us if you've got a problem, an issue. We pretty much, if it's a franchising issue, we probably have an answer. So give us a quick call. Right, so commercial over, let's move on. So hey, what surprised you the most in your extensive study of the 3,300 brands?
Sure. So actually there are a couple things really surprised me, or I should say became more apparent to me. So the first is the franchise space is very competitive. So for these rankings, we look at the brands from the perspective of potential franchise investor. I can totally imagine how competitive it can be for a brand to attract and recruit franchisees. And in order to really get into the next level of the top ranking list and maybe become one of the final 10, franchisors who find and recruit good franchisees were really able to excel in most of the metrics we evaluated. So over the years, no matter how we tweaked the metrics or rates, they were consistently ranked in the top tier. And apparently they know what a good franchisee would look like for their systems, and also know how to attract them and work with the franchisees and support them throughout the whole term. And the second thing is the level of transparency that the top brands provide into their systems. So not only do they disclose the unit level top line in item 19, they also provide detailed information on their unit profitability. So this actually further enables potential franchisees to estimate their expected returns. And nowadays, franchisees are relying heavily on the financial performance representations in their early decision-making process. So especially the more this is especially true for the more experienced business operators. So in the meantime, by providing that information, franchisors also put themselves in a better position to attract those more sophisticated and potentially better performing franchisees. So.
Well, I can tell you, Chen, that every single franchise development person on this webinar is absolutely excited that you said how difficult it is to attract and competitive it is to attract potential franchisees. And I think that if nothing else from the webinar, they're going to take that little piece of the recording and share it with their brand and how important it is. So thank you for sharing that, and those are great insights. So we've got one more slide before questions and answers, and that is, it's difficult if you're at the bottom, and so I wanted to ask you, first of all, am I stuck down there, and have there been examples specifically in this last round that of company or companies that are able to kind of move up into the list so that there's hope? We don't want to abandon all hope here, so give us some hope.
Sure. So, so we did see quite a few brands that had previously been in the bottom group moved up and even moved out of the lower tier. So one example for this year would be Red Mango. So last year, Red Mango was ranked one of the bottom 10 in the medium investment category, and this year it moved up quite a bit from the bottom tier. So for Red Mango specifically, this leap was mainly contributed by their growth in the average unit revenues. And of course, we know there are many things that can affect a brand's ranking, such as economic fluctuations, consumer demand, or even the overall health of the industry that the brand is in. But there are still things that a brand can do to improve and also to get out of the bottom ranking. For example, like we have been consistently emphasizing through our this webinar and also our various projects, improving the level of transparency into your data as well as the quality of the information disclosed. And overall, I would say the bottom is never doomed, and you are still doing better and actually have done a better job than a lot of other brands in the franchise industry by actively offering franchises and having big enough of a scale to be even considered for this ranking. So I would say you're already doing a better job than a lot of other brands in your category in franchising. So.
And this is the expert speaking, so all of you who didn't make the top 10 feel a little bit better after this webinar, especially anybody that was in the lower tier. So, Chen, I'm going to turn this over to you for questions. We do have just a few, and we want to honor the time that people have given to this. So if you want to look at those questions and take a couple for us. And meanwhile, I'm going to move over to that slide where it has all the data for to be able to contact us. So which questions would you like to answer?
Sure. So I think I can. The first one is how is franchisor support, which is item 11, scored? So we don't have a dollar figure associated with our pre or ongoing support. So what goes into it? So I would say basically so whether So I would say we don't really quantify the item 11 because I don't think there's a way to quantify any of the services you provide to the support provided to franchisees. However, we basically just went into the brand's franchise disclosure document to see whether franchisors provide the support to franchisees. For example, as I mentioned, we evaluate whether you provide set selection support to your franchisees and whether you provide pre-opening on-site support and post-opening on-site support. And we also look at marketing fund, whether you have some sort of marketing channel nationally or regionally to help your franchisees to conduct the marketing. And so, like I said, we don't quantify that services, but just basically evaluate whether you have this support or services available for your franchisees. And also towards the end of the ranking, we also went even beyond the document. So we went to some brands' franchise sales website actually, so to double check whether they have this support or services available for franchisees. And the next is what's the average continuity rate for the medium investment brands? So I just checked the number. The average continuity rate for the medium investment level is 95.2%, which is also very high. However, it's a bit lower than the high initial investment category, but significantly higher than the low investment category.
All right. You want to do one more, Chen? And we'll end.
Okay. I think there's a question asking about can we get our individual franchise scores? So I'm not quite sure, but I think maybe there are two folds. So the first is because Sharon mentioned about fund score, which is basically a FICO score for franchise brands, and that's not way in this project. But I think you can reach out to us later after webinar, and then we can find out which brand you're with and whether we have a fund score for you available already. And I think for this ranking specifically, actually overall, we don't have ranking, we don't have scores for every single brand. Because like I said, before we evaluate some of the metrics, we had minimum criteria for brands to be even considered for this ranking. So after doing that, we actually cut down the list quite a bit from maybe 3,300 to approximately 1,100. And then, and also after the first pass, during the first pass, we evaluated unit patterns that, which is system sustainability and unit growth, and that also helped us further shorten the list. And eventually, when we got down to the final 10, after evaluating a big number of brands, and we also applied additional criteria for brands to be even qualified for the top ranking consideration. So, so a short answer is we don't have score for each brand, but we did some fine tuning for the top ranking and some exemptions for the bottom ranking. So we do have some scores for maybe the top tier and the lower tier, but it's not available for all.
Well, and that makes sense because Forbes had asked us to do the top and the lower, and to actually rank 1,100 brands would be a sizable task. So I can understand why we limited what we were asked to do to the top and the lower. So that makes sense. All right, there are a couple of other questions. We're going to look at those and see if because we want to make sure that we're finishing on time. We appreciate your interest. We appreciate you coming. And we hope to have everybody move up. I don't know what that means, but everybody move up in the rankings. And we're grateful that all the lenders and the suppliers and the franchisors attended. And thank you, Chen, for your dedication to franchising, your hard work. I've been with you a couple of times on a site visit, so I know how hard you work, and we thank you for all you do. Thanks, everybody, and thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
Okay, I stopped the meeting, so good job.